Shabbat shalom, everyone. So when I first started working at Temple Israel, I had the privilege of working with Cantor Wendy Sherman as a clergy partner. I soon learned within my first few weeks here that she lovingly referred to the table in her office as the table of torture. As a testament to the torture of the many B'nai Mitzvah students who sat at the table with her throughout the years, it is a true story. I believe she even auctioned off the table at a spaghetti dinner one year. And if memory serves me, Sharon Commissar Langdon bought that table and donated it back so that it could still be in Cantor's office. Fast forward a few years later, and for a while now, I've come to lovingly refer to the table in my office as the table of tears. And no, before you ask, they're not tears born of torture, they're just tears. Sometimes happy tears, sometimes sad tears. Tears of mourning and grief, and tears of frustration or disappointment. Tears that come in meetings of all varieties with any number of original purposes. But oftentimes around my table, people have an outpouring of emotions, and oftentimes it is in that moment that it bubbles to the surface, and tears come with them. So at my table of tears, there's always an abundance of Kleenex and space made for tears. And in fact, after a meeting where lots of tears were shed and many Kleenex used, a very sweet congregant who sat at my table came back with a bag full of stickers. They said, "I ugly cried with Rabbi," and you fill in the blank here. Because both Rabbi Sharfa and I both have a supply of these stickers now. The table of tears is in fact real. Some might even say the stuff of legends. I mean, how many people get stickers out of such an occasion? But as humorous and lighthearted and wonderful as the stickers are, I think they could have some really profound meaning that I hope that as a community we can choose to embrace. And that is the importance and the power of tears. So often in the world that we live in, tears are seen as weak or manipulative. Those who shed them are viewed as unable to control their emotions or rein in themselves. And in particular, women who shed them are labeled as hysterical sometimes. But the truth is, tears are healthy and natural and immensely powerful. And we as a community can and should affirm the need to pour out our tears and live in the fullness of our emotions. And the power and the presence of tears actually take center stage in this week's Torah portion in Vayigash. In this portion, we reach the climactic moment of the Joseph story, where he reveals himself to his brothers. He stands before them, second only to Pharaoh in all of the land of Egypt, and his brothers do not recognize him. Last week, we read that his brothers came to the land of Egypt seeking food because of the famine in their land. Joseph recognized them immediately, but he chose to test them before revealing himself. He plays with them, planting a golden goblet in his youngest brother Benjamin's sack, and accuses them of stealing. He says that Benjamin has to stay with him, wanting to understand, it seems, what his brothers are willing to sacrifice this time. These same brothers who not only rejected and abandoned him, but really left him to die. He wants to know, what will they do a second time with a different brother? And when at last seems that they have passed these tests, when Judah comes before him and says, "Take me instead of my brother, for as the Torah says, how can I go home to my father without the lad, without Benjamin, and see the harm that my father will suffer?" It's then that Joseph reveals himself in a really grand, sweeping gesture. It's really public, almost ostentatious, you might say, this moment of revelation. Says that Joseph could no longer restrain himself before all who were standing in attendance, and so he cried, "Send everyone out away from me," so that no one else was there when Joseph made himself known for his brothers. He gave voice, it says, to a loud wail, and the Egyptians heard. Pharaoh's palace heard. In this moment, Joseph he wept, and he did it loudly and publicly. It was highly public, highly emotional. And though he did send people away, the Torah says that this wailing was so loud that the Egyptians beyond the room heard it. And it even leads us to believe that it was loud enough that Pharaoh's palace heard. And that we have to assume is quite loud. And even if what the text really meant is that the wailing was so public in nature that Pharaoh's palace heard tell of it, even if they didn't hear it directly, what we see here in this portion is a leader in a position of high authority, weeping, crying, wailing. And that isn't even the first time in the story where we see this. In last week's Torah portion, Miketz, and in this week's Torah portion, Vayigash, there are 4 separate instances where the Torah talks about Joseph's tears in relationship to his brother, and a 5th time when he finally sees his father Jacob after so many years. 5 separate accounts of tears from one of our biblical ancestors who ascended to a position of high public leadership, weeping. So as we read this week's Torah portion, I wanted to take a moment to uplift how immensely important that is, to see the Torah describing someone in Joseph's position as a man of tears, someone who sees and experiences tears and emotion as power and not weakness or cause for shame. For me, this moment of revelation when Joseph reveals his true identity to the same brothers who betrayed him and rejected him is one of the most profoundly evocative and moving parts of Torah. And the fact that in this climactic moment, we see a biblical hero weeping with emotion is critically important, I think, to how we can understand the power of emotion in our lives today. Rabbi Menachem Creditor speaks about this moment in Torah as a moment of deep vulnerability that causes the walls that Joseph carefully constructed around his heart to break open. Rabbi Creditor explains that the Torah teaches us that in the breaking open, there is possibility. As one of my mentors once said to me when I was in a moment of deep despair, "You are not falling apart, you're cracking open." Both can be true. And in the breaking, in the opening, there is potential for a profound connection, for healing, and for transformation. This lesson feels deeply relevant today. We live in a world where pain and disconnection seem to echo louder than ever. It's tempting to keep busy, to focus on doing rather than feeling. But as Joseph's story reminds us, the moments when we pause, when we allow ourselves to truly feel, are oftentimes the moments that connect us most deeply to ourselves and to each other. In our own lives, we need the presence of others, family, friends, community, to hold space for us when we crack open. It's in these moments of shared vulnerability that we find strength and comfort and hope. We each need to know that we can experience the fullness of our emotions in safety and with the people who will hold us as we break. My prayer for this first Shabbat of our new year is to affirm that we can and will be those people for each other, that this community can provide that safe space to break open and to be held and embraced, that we will affirm and uplift the power of embracing the full range of our emotions, even the hard ones, because we can do that for each other. And in case anyone ever needs it, my door is always open, and the table of tears with plentiful Kleenex will always be there for you. My prayer for all of us is that one day we can wear the "I cried with Rabbi" sticker with pride as we harness the power of our tears. Shabbat Shalom.